You're listening to 91.5 WDBK-FM Blackwood, Camden County College Radio.
Madness. Total madness.
This is either madness or brilliance.
Trying to make sense out of all the madness.
It is now time for Midday Madness.
But it's madness.
WDBK's Midday Show, where the madness is just beginning.
And welcome to 91.5 WDBK for some Midday Madness. This is Vincent Fost here for your 1 o'clock hour on this wonderful Monday, as it's already crazy to say, but we are, yes, kind of in that final stretch of October already. It is October the 20th. Can't believe that. Can't believe I'm saying that just about right now. But yes, I am. Hope everyone's having an incredible start to their week, of course. Make sure to text into the show, WDBK text line 856-345-9325. Once again, 856-345-9325. If you want to be a part of the show, if you want to be a part of the conversation, of course. Now, of course, first topic I'm going to be getting into, it shouldn't be a surprise, right? With Vincent's Fost Sports Talk on Midday Madness, you already know. Now, I got to talk about what happened yesterday. It should be predictable at this point what I'm going to talk about, right? The Eagles were able to get out of the 2-game losing streak that they fell into, of course, with losses against the Giants, losses against et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, we already know what happened these past 2 weeks. The Broncos, the Giants didn't treat the Eagles well. Well, they got back on the winning side of things again against a very familiar face, I should say, in Carson Wentz. But this is something, again, where, you know, when you look at these, the chances the Eagles got over and over again, it definitely calls for something interesting to talk about and something where the offense finally showed up. Now, of course, at the beginning of the game, things were looking a little shaky, right? It was still that similar Eagles offense. Of course, the Eagles went into halftime with a lead. They had 14 points. 14-6, right? We all know. But half of those points were scored by the defense, of course. It was something that really helped get the energy on their side. Of course, Jalen Hunt picked 6 with the great pressure on Carson Wentz from Jalen Carter. Forced that interception to happen. But that was half of the scoring. So there was still a big concern leading into halftime about this Eagles offense ability to get out of their own way. Of course, a lot of people still going after Kevin Patullo and whatnot. I was one of them. I know many others were. But it was still concerning. And this was something where I know a lot of other Eagles fans were probably thinking the same exact thing. And I 100% was thinking this. Okay, they have the lead at halftime. Let's watch the Eagles blow it all away. Because it was looking like one of those situations again. They get into halftime, they crawl into halftime, 14-6. Yes, they had the lead, but they had multiple opportunities to really put them away early on in the game. I mean, when you want to look at the stats overall, I mean, the Eagles' offense, since that opening touchdown drive that they had in the first half, I'll go over it. After that opening touchdown drive, they had the next drive, 3 plays for 9 yards, resulted in the punt. The play after that, 3 plays for 3 yards, resulted in, you guessed it, a punt. Next play, or next drive, 3 plays and 11 yards. Yes, it also resulted in a punt. And then to finalize the half, 4 plays with 19 yards, and that was the end of the half right there. They took that to the end of the half. 1 first down with 15 yards of penalties. That was how things went in those 4 drives. So this is the type of stuff that I'm bringing up. And this is what, you know, a lot of people, you were going into halftime, whatnot. It was very concerning. It seemed like it was just going to be a repetitive game of what we saw in past weeks, previous weeks, even the games that the Eagles won this year. It was still another one of those situations where the offense would just absolutely die at a specific part of the game, and it was up to the defense to bail them out. Of course, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers matchup that the Eagles had a couple weeks ago was a perfect example of that. Offense showed up, got towards the ending portions of the game. Offense couldn't do anything. The defense bailed them out. Of course, in that Buccaneers game, the big play was the Jahad Campbell interception in the end zone. So this is where I was trying to go with this. And, of course, all of a sudden in the second half, things started to appear once again. Specifically, yes, folks, the long ball. Arguably the best long ball in the NFL returned. And, of course, with that being said, came a passer rating with Jalen Hurts having a perfect passer rating, 158.33. The only other QBs in Eagles history to do that, there were two others. One was Donovan McNabb in 2007 against the Lions, and the other was, yes, number 9, Nick Foles in 2013 against the Oakland Raiders at that time. Of course, we all remember that game. That was insane. Absolutely insane. We'll never forget that at the Oakland Coliseum. Foles was able to get that done. But, of course, yes, Hurts only the third QB in Eagles history to do that. So, what was the big difference? I think that's the question that needs to be asked. What was the big difference in the Eagles' play from previous games, specifically the offense? And I'll come out and say it immediately. Their ability to convert in high-intensity situations. No other question about it. The Eagles were put in many hard areas at times throughout that game. And, of course, on that final drive with that A.J. Brown touchdown. The final drive, I should say, when the Eagles got a touchdown on. Not the final drive that ended the game where they were wasting time. No. The game where... the drive where it looked like the Vikings still had a chance to come back if the Eagles didn't do anything, and they absolutely did. But you look back at the beginning of that drive, again, the last drive the Eagles scored on that resulted in A.J. Brown's second TD of the game. There came a situation where it was a 3rd and long. Hurts stepped back. He was getting chased. He was in the scramble area. Now, we know Jalen Hurts. As much as I love Hurts, in the scramble situation, he is not known to be exactly the greatest thing in the world, especially when looking upfield, when trying to find his receivers open. So that has been something, especially this season, which hasn't been great. And even the Eagles' 3rd down conversions this year haven't exactly been great either. You look at the stats previously that coming into this game. Wasn't actually a great stat at all. But still, the ability to convert on a high-intensity play, again, like that play, he was able to look upfield, was able to find his man, A.J. Brown, just over the first down marker, was able to get the pass off to him, got both feet down, and was tackled out of bounds. That was enough to spark the drive to finalize the Eagles' W. That drive right there with the score at the end of it, completing the drive, coming up with 7 points, right, at the end of the drive, was key. And it wasn't like that was the only time that it happened, of course. The Eagles were able to convert on heavy 4th down situations as well. Again, how did that first touchdown of the game happen? There's another example. And basically being reliable, of course. And I mentioned the conversions, but of course the deep ball was on point. Hurts went 4 of 4 for 189 yards on throws of 25-plus air yards. They finally got that deep ball rocking and rolling once again. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith each had 2 catches on those throws that I just mentioned with those 4 of 4 for 189 yards. And those combined for 54 yards after the catch on both of those. So, again, the key plays, the explosive plays is exactly what the Eagles needed. And this is something where, again, I hope that this is this year's version of what we saw last year. Remember last year, the Eagles went into the Week 5 bye week. They were 2-2. They just got blown out against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going into that Week 5 bye week last year. What happened? They came out of the Week 5 bye week. They got a win. It wasn't a huge win, but that was all. It started to propel them forward, right? They started getting even bigger wins against the Cincinnati Bengals. They got a huge win facing off against Joe Burrow at that time. Big win there. Got it rolled over the Giants. So they were starting to get momentum. And this was something of their ability to have explosive games after coming out of a horrible loss. And this is exactly what we witnessed this year. Eagles went up against the Giants. Not just the Giants, they had back-to-back losses, right? After being 4-0. That's a little bit of a hit in the gut. Not only did you lose, but you lost to the Giants that are not only your NFC East rival, but not a good growing lineup in New York. Scatterboo, Jackson Dart, those two were absolutely torching the Eagles. Okay, I don't want to bring too much negative thoughts on their name. As much as I can't stand New York, I will give them credit. You guys have something there, and you have a reason to be excited. Even though you blew that game against Denver last night, hey, it's a young team. They still need to learn to have that winning mentality. They'll get there. New York has something to be excited about. I'll pinpoint that. But still, you came off a really, really bad loss against the Giants, which, again, should not even compare to the talent that the Eagles have. But they did, and they ran them over. So what do? Do you roll over or not? And this shows what a good football team is, their ability to respond. And not only respond, but to do things that they haven't done all year. For those explosive plays to fall out, finally. Or to come out, I should say. Your long ball this year went from being one of the best in the league last year to not being great at all this year. A lot of miscommunication, as we saw going into this season, of course. The Denver game was a good example of that. Many times again, the receiver and Hurts were not on the same page. A.J. Brown, a couple times with that, where he kind of gave up on his route. We all know that situation. There was another one in that game with Jahan Dotson, where Dotson curled out left, Hurts threw the ball to the right. Had enough length on it, but wasn't in the right area. Miscommunication. That was a lot of what was going on. And then, of course, the drama that concurred after that, which, again, your team was already not playing well. But to add the drama on top, of course, A.J. Brown coming out and saying his displeasure, la, la, la. We know the whole story with that. Devontae Smith didn't necessarily take that route, but you could see he was not happy by the body language when he'd be walking off the field post-game. And you see him walking down the tunnel, yeah, you could just tell by the body language. Wasn't exactly the happiest on what was transpiring with that Eagles offense, how it was being ran. So, yes. But now you were able to get those guys in the mix. And not only were you able to get them in the mix again, you had Devontae Smith now have a record game in terms of receiving yards, breaking that 180 mark. So, still, something to be proud about. And, of course, Devontae Smith was having that 180-plus yards, that 183, and the touchdown. This was the first time that has happened since Jeremy Maclin did it in 2014. First player, Devontae Smith, to finish with 180-plus yards and a touchdown since Jeremy Maclin. Now, of course, A.J. Brown also had an incredible game. Like I said, 2 touchdown catches in the game. And the most important catch was on the 45-yard reception on the 3rd and 9 with 1:45 left to seal it. And that was the one that I was talking about, of course, with the Eagles showing up in clutch situations. Showing up on those times where they really need to convert it. Where in previous games, they would have most likely folded or collapsed. Now, I understand, and this is something where a lot of people tend to forget. You know, your offensive line was hurting. Again, you had guys like Brett Toth in there, and it seems like every single week this season, the injury bug has been pinpointing this poor Eagles offensive line. It hasn't ended. It's been constant. You had Dickerson back, but then Cam Jurgens. What happened there? Brett Toth, of course, filling in the center position. But still, the pass game was key. And this goes back to how the Eagles were ran last year. And it's pretty simple. Okay, you'll shut down our run game. Bet we'll kill you with the pass. And you already know what they were doing. There were many times where yesterday, the Vikings had 8 guys up on the line. So people were saying, why isn't the run game going? Don't get me wrong. I would have liked to see a little bit better play calling when it came to the run game. Again, this is a defense where it's even been said by different analysts, Fox analysts, whatnot. It's a very predictable offense in terms of the way it's called in certain portions of the game. And the run game is especially one to be easily predicted. And that's exactly what the opposing teams are doing. But the Eagles yesterday, and of course we saw it, Vikings were stacking the box in a big-time way. They were stacking the box, no question about it. I mean, when you have 8 guys up on the line, I don't know what else says that more. But, again, they were able to force them to the pass game, and that was the thing. Let's blitz Hurts. They blitzed many times. Let's force them to pass. Now, we already know the Eagles' history with reading the blitz. It's not the greatest thing in the world, But yesterday, they were able to get that going. They were able to get the quick short passes out. They were able to get the passes out where the receiver is stationary, say 7 yards down the field. So 1st and 10, you have your receiver stationed 7 yards down. You're able to get the pass out quick. This is something where you try to move those linebackers back further. I mean, there were many passes yesterday. The Eagles had it over the middle. So that's kind of what we've been seeing. And they were challenged to do it yesterday. Challenged with the pass game. And the Eagles didn't disappoint. Hurts was able to deal downfield. There were many times, again, with that defense being way up. Secondary had many opportunities yesterday. I mean, I don't know how many times Devontae Smith was basically standing in the middle of the field. There were 3 players in the Vikings secondary standing around him, but he was perfectly centered right in the middle of them. There were also many curlback routes where they came back and get the ball. Again, because you had how many guys up on that line? It was just the secondary only. That allows the option for those curlback routes to indeed happen, and they worked. So definitely no question about it. Better passing game, but something where I really would like to see, and of course, this is something where that second quarter for the Eagles was not great. And of course, I talked about the beginning of this Eagles of this talk show. This is something where that quarter off, I should say, majority of it was the first and second quarter. They got good. They were able to get the touchdown on the first drive of the game. But moving onward, of course, things kind of fell off. And this is something where I still feel the rhythm needs a little work. And this is something where, again, with the short passes, something where if you need a screen, you need a screen. But something just to get that offense in a rhythm, to get Hurts in a rhythm and whatnot. Again, the short passing game, to try to back off those linebackers. Something to get them going. That way they know, okay, they're not just going to run it up the middle every single play, or especially as some people can't stand when Kevin Patullo runs it up the middle in a 3rd and long situation. We saw that quite a few times this year. We saw it actually, believe it or not, a couple times yesterday. Yes. So that stuff still happened. Don't get me wrong. But they were able to convert when it mattered most. Like I said, of course, at the beginning of the game, that beginning drive, the Eagles converted in key situations twice on 4th down. And, of course, that first touchdown of the game to A.J. Brown, which was a dot. That was on a 4th down play. And, of course, the Eagles also got called for a penalty on that. So this is something where, again, they really racked up the penalties in that first half alone. After that touchdown drive, specifically 15 yards of penalties were called. So not exactly the greatest thing in the world if you're an Eagles fan at all. And this is something where, again, it's the discipline is also a factor. But their ability to still show up in key situations and to get the job done. But this is something where the rhythm is, if there's one little thing that I could pick out of this offense, again, after a win like this, the offense played great, their best game of the season. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Their best game of the season. I would still like to see those short passes, any type of short passes, whether it's screens, whatever you have to do. That's what I'd like to see a little bit more of. Of course, Eagles fans yesterday finally got their wish on some play action plays. Again, I know a lot of people, I was watching people just spamming play action, play action, play action. That's what we want to see. Well, finally, they started taking some of that advice. But definitely kudos to them. They were able to get the job done yesterday. And, of course, great outing from Jalen Hurts. 19 out of 23 for his passing, 326 yards, 3 touchdowns, of course, like mentioned. One to Smith, to the Brown. 158.33 QB rating. Absolutely incredible to see. Vontae Smith, 9 receptions, 183 yards, long of 79 yards. Of course, that was that beautiful touchdown, absolute dime, where it was against, yes, the former Eagle. Defending on that play, Devontae Smith was former Eagle Isaiah Rodgers, who I want back so bad. Given what we had yesterday, of course, would be nice to have Isaiah Rodgers back. That is something we're on the air at 91.5. Big mistake. As good as Howie Roseman was in these past off seasons, this past off season, that was a problem. getting rid of Isaiah Rodgers, even when he was leaving, he was not looking to sign for millions and millions and millions of dollars. Not one of these huge contracts. I get he's not the best thing in the world, but he was definitely, again, he's kind of better than what they have now. And I love that I'm saying that as I'm talking about him getting burnt by Devontae Smith. Probably. Incredible game as well. 4 receptions, 121 yards. 45 yards was his long. Of course, that was also a touchdown, folks. And then the 2 touchdowns that he recorded total for the game, the one at the very beginning. And yes, he had the final one as well. Eagles scored 7 points in each quarter. First quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, all 7 points. Of course, first quarter was that A.J. Brown one. Second quarter was the defense helping out, right? Which we're about to move on to right now. With, of course, Jalix Hunt with that pick 6. Jalen Carter was in Wentz's face. It was an inside slant. The front dropped on that inside slant, allowing Jalix Hunt to be right there. No one was in front of him to challenge it. They were able to get him back, or bring it home, bring it to the house, right? So great to see the big man get it right there, of course. But the defense is another one where, don't get me wrong, how the defensive play, now shifting gears, there were those unfortunate moments, of course, where the defensive line had great portions of the game where they were getting great pressure on Wentz, getting right in Wentz's face. And it showed. You get pressure on Wentz, he folds like a book. It shows. You get in his face, he folds like a book. Don't get me wrong, did Wentz have some good scrambling plays? Yeah, he's had some good scrambling plays. But overall, you take away his options downfield, which the secondary finally started to do when it mattered most. And they got to him. Now, don't get me wrong. There were still some mistakes made. Of course, Andrew Makuba, even though Makuba did have an interception. Remember, folks, there were 2 interceptions during this game. One by Makuba, one by Jalix Hunt. But again, that interception by Andrew Makuba was a perfect example. They got in Wentz's face. They were able to get in Wentz's face. And once again, the pressure mounted. Wentz kind of, I don't know why he threw that ball, but he chucked it down the field. No one was even challenging Makuba. There was a receiver in the area for the Vikings, but there were 2 Eagles in the area as well. And I got to tell you what, it was a perfect throw to Makuba. So even on that play, it's another example of the defensive line stepping up when necessary. Now, of course, it got to a certain portion of the game where, of course, we got in the third quarter, and the pressure seemed to have let up, which was kind of unfortunate to see. As well as that Eagles D-line was doing, the pressure kind of let up. And then the secondary as well. Things were not going good. Makuba had some misplays, of course. Even Quinyon Mitchell, there were some mistakes here and there. Of course, with Quinyon Mitchell, there was a play where it looked like the safety was shadowing, but kind of stepped back. So it kind of made it look worse on Quinyon Mitchell. But there was a certain situation where, when you looked at it, the safety for the Eagles, I'm not quite sure which safety it was who was in the area, but was supposed to be shadowing that play and it was not. So there were some mistakes. There was some miscommunication in the secondary overall for the Eagles, and the short passes for the Vikings, I mean, they were able to get them off. Wentz made some good throws. Now, of course, talking about Quinyon Mitchell while we're on that topic, Quinyon Mitchell, not a bad game, especially when referring to him when he was covering Justin Jefferson, probably one of the best, if not the best wide receiver in the NFL. These were his stats against Justin Jefferson. Overall, 20 routes, 1 catch allowed on 3 targets, 10 yards, which were allowed, and a 43.7 passer rating. So not bad at all. Not bad at all. I'll give Q his credit where it deserves to have it. Of course, being able to lock down one of the best receivers in the league. Of course, the Minnesota's best receiver, obviously. That's like, I mean, can't get any more obvious than that. But kind of similar to what I was mentioning with the Eagles' offense at the beginning of this talk show. How the offense was able to come up in clutch situations to convert on 4th downs. Of course, they converted on a couple 4th downs in that beginning drive. That 3rd and long situation on the final scoring drive for the Eagles. Again, the final scoring drive where that A.J. Brown touchdown, the second one of the game. where Hurts converted on that 3rd and long and scrambling, finding A.J. Brown downfield. Like I mentioned, how the offense showed up in clutch situations, that was the defense. Were there mistakes? Yes. But the defense overall was able to get 5 stops in the red zone. Many times the Minnesota Vikings were going down there, just couldn't get it. They only had 1 touchdown. Everything else was field goals. And even that 1 touchdown that the Vikings got, they had to work for it, man. I mean, they barely got that. That ball, that tip of the ball barely broke the plane. I mean, barely. So the Eagles' defense was making it work when it mattered most. And, of course, yes, we can all say that beginning portion, that drive with Minnesota looked like they were threatening the first time when they were in the red zone. And that unfortunate that beautiful snap, right? I'll say it's a beautiful snap, where Minnesota center snapped it about 2 feet above Wentz's head. Again, Wentz is not a small guy, but, yep, their center still found a way to get it over his head. And it pretty much took them all the way back to the point. I think it was like a 51 or so yard field goal try for them. So, I mean, they were inside the 30, if I'm not wrong, on that play. And that snap pretty much almost took them out of field goal range. They almost ruined their chance, period, right there. So don't get me wrong. The defense had some help. There was also another time where there was a throw into the end zone. Vikings thought they had a touchdown, but then after further review, it was discovered that the catch was bobbled. So there were some times where they got lucky. The Eagles got lucky. That drop play right there, of course, was one. The bad snap was another. So don't get me wrong. There were times they got lucky. But they were still able to show up when it mattered most. The 5 stops in the red zone, that's key. The big-time sacks that the Eagles were able to get, of course, Moro Ojomo had the big one. But holding Minnesota to 1 touchdown and 6 drives is something that has to be talked about. This defense showing up when it mattered most. Of course, there was another one. We were just talking about Quinyon Mitchell locking down Justin Jefferson. Well, what about Cooper DeJean? He had a touchdown-saving play on Justin Jefferson. Yeah, 100%. Yes, he did. Justin Jefferson looked like he was coming down with it. DeJean knocked it out just in time, dropped the ball, went out the back of the end zone. So these guys, again, there were flaws, but they stood up when it mattered most. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm sure Vic Fangio has a lot to say about that game. A lot of patches that need to be worked up. Of course, again, injuries kind of hit the defense as well, right? We know Adoree Jackson got hurt, of course, with a concussion that looked a little concerning at first. Adoree Jackson was down for quite a bit. Then he got up and was walking extremely gingerly towards the sideline. Once he got to the sideline, it was kind of still went to the blue tent, got checked out. Even though when he came out of the blue tent, he was still wobbly. So he was checked out with a concussion. He was ruled out, of course. That was in the 3rd quarter when that happened. Adoree Jackson was trying to go in and make a tackle on Minnesota Vikings tight end TJ Hawkinson. And if you've ever seen TJ Hawkinson, yeah, he's a big guy. He's a broad guy. But again, Adoree Jackson was doing that form of a tackle that I don't like. In my opinion, it's not a form of a real tackle where he kind of goes down for the legs. And you even saw it. He was kind of aiming for Hawkinson's legs. Next thing you know, Hawkinson's forearm, elbow, and chest meet with Adoree Jackson's head, kind of knocking him into a loop. And, of course, yes, he was laying down on the field for quite some time. They went in the commercial break. They came back. He was still down. And then finally the wonderful training staff for the Eagles were able to get him up, luckily. So great to see him able to walk off under his own power, but still was stumbling around. Then, of course, the Eagles got caught with the injury bug even more. Of course, we were already talking about center Cam Jurgens, who left early in the 2nd quarter with a knee injury, and he was replaced by Brett Toth, like I mentioned at the beginning of this talk show. Other injured players, of course, with edge rusher Azeez Ojulari. The Eagles getting hit hard in that position. Of course, you had a retirement, right? You had Nolan Smith, who's still out. A lot of stuff going on with the edge position at this time. Now, I understand a lot of people talking about, well, yeah, Brandon Graham said that he could strongly consider coming out of retirement to help the Eagles. Okay. Well, that's a veteran coming out of retirement to help the Eagles out. Okay, I understand that. But still, you need an edge. And yes, they had Jihad Campbell again up many times during this game, which is definitely great to see, knowing Jihad Campbell, and another reason why the Eagles made sure to get him in this past NFL draft. You had Campbell playing up in multiple different situations where now, luckily, you have Nakobe Dean back, so you're able to get some more help now in that linebacker position. Jihad Campbell moving to the edge. But yeah, overall, they need help on the edge. And with Brandon Graham coming back, even if he does come back, I'm still a little concerned saying, okay, well, that's an older veteran, right, who went out last year with a torn biceps, injury, triceps, excuse me. And then apparently in the Super Bowl, he re-injured it. So bringing back a veteran who is already injury prone, again, I don't know how that's necessarily, don't get me wrong, anything helps the Eagles defensive line. Having a guy like that, the number one trash talker in the league, come back. And so he was performing at a high level. I don't want to dish on Brandon Graham. He was still performing at a high level when he retired. But seeing a veteran like that come back, I don't know how I feel about that. It doesn't necessarily make me think that's going to solve all the Eagles' issues. Will it help? Maybe, but I don't know. I'm not too crazy about that whole thing. You can say whatever you want. You can get mad at me or whatnot, but I'm just, with that whole situation and possibly seeing Brandon Graham come back, it doesn't get me jumping off my feet. Maybe it does for you, but for me, I don't know. I'm not going too crazy for that decision. But then, of course, moving on to our next injury, yes, linebacker Jeremiah Trotter Jr. was also injured during yesterday's game with an ankle. So that's where we stand, of course, at this point in time. But we'll just have to see how things develop moving down the line, right? But Eagles overall were able to get the job done. They are able to now improve the 5-2, getting back on the winning side of things once again. And now next week, the Eagles have the rematch with the New York Giants. The Kelly Greens will be coming out for the first time this season. Great to see. Don't want to jinx them too much, but there's a certain thing that